I'm Jenna Wallace, 34, a single mom to my sweet 6-year-old son, Caleb. Right now, I'm gripping the steering wheel as I drive away from my childhood home in Boulder, Colorado, blinking through tears while Caleb sits silently in the back seat, clutching his little stuffed dinosaur. Today was supposed to be a warm, grateful Thanksgiving in 2016. Instead, I was blindsided, kicked out in front of everyone, because my younger sister, Emily, didn't want us there. And the part that still makes my chest ache? I've been covering my parents' mortgage and utilities for 6 years. Before I tell you how everything unraveled today, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And hit subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by the people you thought you could trust most. Growing up, I believed we were a solid, loving family. My parents, Diane and Greg Wallace, raised us in a cozy ranch-style home nestled at the edge of Chautauqua Park. We had matching pajamas at Christmas, hiked together every spring, and did backyard BBQs like clockwork. But even as a kid, something always felt unequal. Emily was born when I was 5. I was ecstatic to be a big sister. I picked out a soft fleece blanket for her crib and proudly helped diaper her. There's a photo of me at the hospital, my arm around her, beaming. But as the years passed, the favoritism became obvious. When Emily scraped her knee, she got Band-Aids, ice cream, and 10 minutes of cuddles. When I fell, it was, "You're fine, Jenna. Be strong." When Emily got a B, my parents met with her teachers and offered tutors. When I brought home straight A's, it was, "That's just Jenna. She always delivers." I poured myself into being the good daughter. Honors classes, student council, part-time job. I did it all. Meanwhile, Emily learned how to twist every situation in her favor. She'd create chaos and always land softly in our parents' arms. "They say she's more emotional," they'd say when I questioned the double standards. "She needs more support." By the time I graduated high school with a full scholarship, I already knew. No matter what I did, I would never be their priority. But what happened today? That proved just how far they'd go to protect her and discard me. Emily was always the golden girl, pretty, charming, effortlessly popular, but always in trouble, skipping school, sneaking out, showing up drunk at parties. By sophomore year, she was already on a first-name basis with the school counselor. But every time she crossed the line, our parents shrugged it off. "She's just figuring things out," Mom would say. "She's got a free spirit," Dad added once, laughing like it was endearing. After high school, I enrolled at the University of Colorado on a partial scholarship. I double majored in business and finance, holding down 2 part-time jobs to stay afloat. Meanwhile, Emily barely graduated and enrolled in community college, on our parents' dime. She dropped out a year later. During my junior year, I met Marcus, a senior studying marketing. He was driven, kind, and made me feel seen in a way no one else ever had. We dated through my senior year and got married a month after graduation. I was 23, young, maybe, but hopeful. I landed a job with a wealth management firm in downtown Denver. Marcus found work at a mid-size ad agency. We bought a small townhome outside Westminster, started budgeting, saving. When I found out I was pregnant with Caleb, it felt like life was coming together. But just 7 months in, everything shattered. A late-night message on Marcus's phone revealed an affair with a coworker. I confronted him. He denied it, then admitted it. We tried counseling, but the trust was gone. By the time Caleb was 3 months old, I was alone. Those next years were a blur of exhaustion and grit. I dropped Caleb off at daycare every morning, worked 8-hour shifts, and logged back on after bedtime to meet deadlines. I budgeted every penny, skipped nights out, and poured myself into work and motherhood. My parents babysat occasionally, but their time, energy, really, was consumed by Emily. She'd moved back home, jobless and bouncing between toxic relationships. Still, they coddled her. She needed support, while I was expected to figure it out. By the time Caleb turned 3, I had climbed the ranks and landed a managerial position. I moved us into a quiet neighborhood near Mapleton Hill, where the schools were great and the parks clean. Then, 5 years ago, Dad had a heart attack. Mild, but enough to pull back the curtain. They were broke, deep in debt, facing foreclosure, and still financially entangled with Emily. Without hesitation, I stepped up. I paid off their credit cards, covered their mortgage, and set up automatic payments for utilities. I even added them to my health insurance. I thought they'd finally see my worth. I was wrong. When their old Subaru finally gave out, I co-signed the loan for a new one. When hail damaged their roof during a late spring storm, I wrote the check. In total, I've spent over $120,000 supporting my parents in the past 5 years. And Emily? Her chaos only deepened. She'd move in with a new boyfriend, post Instagram stories about starting fresh, land a part-time job at a salon or coffee shop. And within months, it would all implode. She'd be back at my parents' house, jobless, heartbroken, and blaming everyone but herself. Then came the pills. First painkillers after a minor car accident, then anxiety meds, then alcohol. She bounced in and out of rehab, always funded by family money, which really meant my money. Still, I tried to keep peace. I wanted Caleb to know his grandparents, to feel that generational love I never quite got. Every other Sunday, we'd drive to their home in North Boulder for family dinner. I'd sit through my mom's passive-aggressive jabs about Caleb's screen time, my dad's rants about politics, and Emily's latest emotional meltdown, when she bothered to show up. "You're so lucky, Jenna," Mom would sigh over dessert. "Everything just comes so easy for you." I'd bite my tongue, thinking of the all-nighters I pulled building investment portfolios, the parent-teacher meetings I raced to attend, the loneliness of managing every detail of Caleb's life alone. Nothing came easy. I earned every inch of peace we had. But family is family, I told myself, so I kept coming back. Kept hoping that maybe one day we'd become a real unit again. That hope lasted until this Thanksgiving. This year, I was actually excited. Caleb, now 6, was finally old enough to help in the kitchen, to set the table, to remember the smell of cinnamon and the sound of laughter. I wanted to host. I wanted to build our tradition. I called my parents 3 weeks in advance. "Actually, honey," Mom chirped, "we were thinking of hosting here. Your father's feeling stronger. It'll be just like old times." Disappointed, I agreed. "Of course, Mom. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourselves. And that cranberry sauce. Everyone loves it." The week before, I went all out. New clothes, handmade gifts, a special whiskey for Dad, a scarf for Mom, even a gift card for Emily. Caleb stirred the sauce beside me, his apron dusted with sugar. "Is Aunt Emily going to be there?" he asked, his eyes wide. I didn't know then how much that one question would end up mattering. Caleb's question gave me pause. Emily had skipped the last few family dinners, always with a vague excuse. Not feeling well, last-minute plans, bad anxiety day. "I'm not sure, buddy," I answered truthfully, "but Grandma and Grandpa will definitely be there." 3 days before Thanksgiving, I got a call from my mom. "Hi, Jenna, sweetheart," she began in that overly chipper voice she only used when something uncomfortable was coming. "I was just wondering, is it really necessary for you to come on Thursday?" I nearly dropped the phone. "What do you mean, Mom? It's Thanksgiving." Yes, of course," she backpedaled quickly, voice fluttering. "I just thought, you're always so busy with work, and the drive can be tiring." "Mom, it's a 40-minute drive. I've already taken Thursday and Friday off." I frowned. "Is something wrong?" No, everything's fine," she said too quickly. "We'll see you Thursday, around 2. I hung up, confused. What was that? Was something going on? Or was I overthinking? 2 days before Thanksgiving, I decided to call my dad just to be sure. "Hey, Dad, just checking we're still on for 2 o'clock Thursday?" There was a pause. Yeah, that's right." Then he added hesitantly, "Jenna, there's something you should probably know." My stomach tightened. "What's going on?" "Emily's going through a tough time. That boyfriend of hers, what's his name? Tyler, left last week. It got messy. She's moved back home." I exhaled slowly. "Of course. I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Emily might be a storm, but she was still my sister. "Is there anything I can do?" No, Dad said quickly. Just be understanding if she's a little on edge Thursday. Your mom's hoping there won't be any tension. Dad, I always try with Emily, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not the one who starts drama. I know, sweetheart. I know, he sighed. It's just a delicate time. The day before Thanksgiving, I got a text from Mom. Jenna, would it be possible for you to come at 3 instead of 2? Need a little extra time to get things ready? Something in my gut twisted. I showed the message to my friend Rachel over coffee. That's weird, she said, brow furrowed. Especially after that phone call. Feels like they're stalling you. Something's definitely up. Maybe they're having money trouble again, I suggested. Dad hasn't even cashed the property tax check I mailed last month. Rachel gave me a long, knowing look. Jenna, you're way too good to them, especially considering how they treat Emily like royalty. I shifted uncomfortably in my chair. Rachel had seen the favoritism firsthand over the years and never held back her thoughts. They're family, I said, the phrase I always defaulted to. Family should go both ways, she replied. Just be careful, okay? Don't let them keep using your generosity as a crutch. Thanksgiving morning arrived crisp and clear, sunlight cutting through the frost on the windows. Caleb woke me before dawn, bouncing on my bed with a wide grin. Mom! Mom! It's Turkey Day! I laughed and pulled him in for a hug. Yes, it is, buddy. Happy Thanksgiving. We spent the morning in our pajamas, watching the Macy's parade and sipping cocoa. The house smelled of cinnamon and nutmeg from the 2 pumpkin pies I'd baked the night before. By noon, we started getting dressed. Do you think Grandma made those butter rolls? Caleb asked as I helped him button his little blue shirt. I bet she did, I smiled. Remember how many you ate last year? He giggled. 3. And will Uncle Thomas and Aunt Lily be there too? Maybe, I said, not really sure. We'll find out soon. As I did my makeup, I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling in my stomach. It's just one meal, I told myself. Whatever's going on, we'll handle it for Caleb's sake. He proudly carried the cranberry sauce to the car while I loaded the pies and carefully wrapped gifts. Ready for Thanksgiving, buddy? Ready, he beamed, giving a thumbs up as I buckled him in. We pulled into my parents' driveway at exactly 3 p.m. Several unfamiliar cars were lined up along the street. That's odd, I thought. Mom hadn't mentioned extended guests. Look, Caleb, I said, pointing. That blue sedan's Uncle Thomas and Aunt Lily's. Looks like they made it. His face lit up. Yes, Uncle Thomas always brings me puzzles. We gathered everything and walked to the door. Before I could knock, it swung open. There stood my father, wearing the forest green sweater I bought him last Christmas. Jenna, Caleb, he said, forcing a smile. Come on in. And instantly, I knew something wasn't right. Come in, Dad said, stepping aside. The house smelled incredible. Roast turkey, sage stuffing, and that warm, yeasty aroma of Mom's famous dinner rolls. But something wasn't right. The usual hugs, chatter, and smiles were missing, replaced with stiff nods and an air of tension that wrapped around the room like fog. Where should I put these, Grandpa? Caleb asked, holding up the cranberry sauce with both hands. In the kitchen, buddy, Dad said, tousling his hair. Grandma's in there. As Caleb padded off, I turned to Dad. Is everything okay? You seem tense. Before he could answer, Mom emerged from the kitchen, apron dusted in flour. She gave me a quick, fluttery hug, the kind that didn't land properly. Jenna, you're right on time. Dinner's almost ready, she said, eyes flicking around the room without quite meeting mine. From the living room, I heard laughter and voices, far more than I expected. Something felt off. Who else is here? I asked. Oh, just family, she replied quickly. Thomas and Lily, Cousin Patricia and her husband, your Aunt Sarah. Her voice trailed off as Caleb returned from the kitchen, his brow furrowed. Before I could ask what was wrong, a sharp voice echoed from the hallway. What is she doing here? Emily stood at the edge of the living room, arms folded, glaring at me like I was a trespasser. Her hair was now black with purple streaks, and she'd lost weight, but the bitterness in her eyes was unmistakable. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Emily, please. It's Thanksgiving. You said she wasn't coming, Emily snapped, jabbing a finger at me like I'd crashed a party. You promised. I blinked, stunned. What are you talking about? I turned toward my parents. You told me to be here at 3. Dad stepped forward, hands raised. Girls, not now. Everyone's waiting to eat. I'm not sitting at the table with her, Emily shouted. You all know what she did? I stared at her. Emily, I haven't seen you in months. I don't know what you're even talking about. Oh, don't act innocent, she hissed. That's your whole thing, isn't it? Perfect, Jenna, making me look like the crazy one. Caleb slipped his hand into mine, trembling. I steadied myself and looked at my mom. Is this what you meant when you asked if I needed to come? What's going on? Why is Emily acting like this? I asked, my voice tight. My mother looked down, then at my father, then finally met my eyes. Jenna, maybe today isn't a good day after all. I stared at her, stunned. Wait, are you asking us to leave? From the living room, I heard chairs scraping and whispered murmurs. My Uncle Thomas stepped into the hallway behind Emily, his face etched with confusion. Everything okay out here? He asked, glancing around. No, Emily snapped. They invited her, after telling me she wouldn't be here. Thomas blinked. But Jenna always comes to family gatherings. Not anymore, Emily said flatly. Not after what she's done. I narrowed my eyes. What exactly am I supposed to have done? Emily crossed her arms. Oh, please, you've been trying to ruin me for years, telling everyone I'm lazy, unstable, a burden, making up lies to make yourself look better. I was speechless. I had never spoken poorly of her to family, only occasionally vented to Rachel in private. Emily, that's not true, I said, keeping my voice even. I haven't said anything about you to anyone. Liar, she shouted. Caleb flinched and stepped closer to me, gripping my coat sleeve. Everyone's been looking at me differently lately, judging me. That started right after your lunch with Aunt Sarah last month. I blinked. That lunch? We talked about Caleb's school, a new client project, and maybe mentioned Emily in passing, but nothing cruel. Aunt Sarah now appeared behind Thomas. Emily, sweetheart, Jenna didn't say anything hurtful. We were just concerned. See? Emily's voice rose. She's turned all of you against me. My mom stepped in quickly, raising both hands. Please, let's not do this today. Then she turned to me and in a whisper said, Jenna, maybe it's best if you and Caleb come another time. Emily needs us right now. It hit like a punch to the chest. Mom, are you seriously asking me to leave? On Thanksgiving? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Just this once, Jenna. The doctor said stress could trigger another episode for Emily. Episode? I asked sharply. What are you talking about? That's none of her business, Emily snapped. Just get her out of here. Mom? Caleb whispered, tugging on my hand. Why is Aunt Emily mad? Why is everyone fighting? His small voice cracked something deep in me. This was supposed to be a joyful day for him. Turkey, laughter, maybe even a silly board game afterward. I don't know, sweetheart, I said softly, looking between my mother and father. We were invited. We brought food. Caleb's been looking forward to this for weeks. I know, dear, Mom replied, her gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. But family has to come first. The words hit like a slap. I am family, Mom. We are. Dad stepped beside her, slipping his arm around her shoulder. Of course you are. But Emily's in a fragile place right now. You've always been the strong one, Jenna. We're asking for your understanding. From the living room, Cousin Patricia called out, Is dinner ready? The kids are getting hungry. Just a few more minutes. Mom called back, her voice suddenly chipper, almost chirpy. Then, in a hushed tone to me, she added, We'll pack some food for you to take. It's no trouble. I stood frozen, my fingers wrapped around Caleb's. My throat burned, my chest hollow. They were really doing it, asking us to leave. For her. You're choosing her over us? I said quietly. Again. It's not like that, Dad said quickly. It's just for today. You're not welcome at our family dinner, Emily snapped. So take your brat and go. That word. Brat. It flipped a switch inside me. You can say what you want about me, I said, voice low, tight with restraint. But don't you ever speak about my son like that again. Caleb is your nephew, and he's done nothing wrong. Emily rolled her eyes. Whatever, just leave. I turned to my parents, waiting, hoping for them to say something, anything. But all my mother offered was, I'll wrap up some turkey and potatoes and take your pies. We've got plenty of dessert. And in that moment, everything fell into place. All the years I spent excusing them, all the holidays spent swallowing hurt. It was over. No need, I said, my voice cold. Keep the food. Keep the gifts. Keep everything. I knelt to Caleb, whose eyes shimmered with tears. Come on, buddy. We're going to have our own Thanksgiving. But Mom, Caleb said softly from behind me, what about Grandma's rolls? I saw my mother flinch, just slightly, but she didn't say a word. We'll make our own rolls, I promised him, squeezing his hand. Better ones. As we turned toward the door, Emily stood smugly to the side, arms folded in triumph. My parents exchanged uneasy glances, but didn't move. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't ask us to stay. Only Uncle Thomas stepped forward. Jenna, wait. But I shook my head, cutting him off. Enjoy your dinner, I said, keeping my voice calm despite the ache swelling in my throat. Don't worry about us. We'll be fine. With that, Caleb and I stepped back out into the cold, leaving behind the cranberry sauce, the pies, the carefully wrapped gifts, and the last bits of hope I'd been holding onto about my family. The first few minutes in the car were quiet, save for Caleb's soft sniffles. I gripped the wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead, blinking away the sting in mine. Mom? His voice finally broke the silence. Why were Grandma and Grandpa mean to us? I looked up into the rearview mirror at his small, confused face. How do you explain betrayal to a 6-year-old? They weren't very kind today, I said gently. Sometimes grown-ups make really bad choices. But it's Thanksgiving, he said, frowning. You always say we're supposed to be together on Thanksgiving. I know, buddy. My throat tightened. That's how it should be. His voice was small. Did I do something wrong? Is that why they made us go? That shattered me. No, Caleb. You did nothing wrong, I said firmly. This isn't about you. Then why? I couldn't drive anymore. I pulled into Chautauqua Park, where we often came to picnic or chase ducks in spring. Parking beneath the cottonwoods, I turned to face him. Sometimes, family can be complicated. Aunt Emily was upset, and Grandma and Grandpa thought they were helping by letting her have her way. But they were wrong to ask us to leave. Caleb nodded slowly. Aunt Emily was really mad. She was, I agreed. She called me a brat. His lip trembled. I unbuckled my seatbelt and reached for his hand. And that was very wrong. You are smart, kind, and so loved. Anyone would be lucky to have Thanksgiving with you. He wiped his eyes. Can we still have turkey? I smiled. We'll have our own Thanksgiving dinner, just the two of us. As Caleb stared out the window at the empty playground, I glanced down at my phone. 5 missed calls, 3 from Mom, 1 from Dad, 1 from Uncle Thomas. A handful of texts followed. Mom, Jenna, please understand. Emily needs us right now. Call me when you get home safely. Dad, don't be upset. We'll make it up to you. Uncle Thomas, what happened was wrong. Call me later. I locked the screen without replying. Instead, I opened my banking app and scrolled. There it was. Month after month of automatic payments, mortgage assistance, utility bills, insurance premiums. Over $2,000 a month for the past 5 years. I thought about the birthdays, the holidays I'd carefully crafted to make special. The year I surprised them with a weekend trip to New York so they could see the Nutcracker, even though I couldn't afford a hotel for myself and Caleb, and we stayed in a tiny Airbnb miles away. Or the elegant dinner I arranged for Dad's 60th, booking a private room at their favorite restaurant. The 100 little sacrifices I made, quietly, so they wouldn't have to. And for what? To be discarded the moment Emily had another tantrum? A memory pushed forward. Mom, eyes wet with gratitude, the day I offered to help after Dad's heart attack. We don't know what we'd do without you, Jenna, she'd whispered, pulling me into a hug. You've always been our rock. Their rock. Their dependable daughter. Their unspoken financial safety net. My phone buzzed again. Mom, I've packed a plate for you and Caleb. Your father can drop it off later. The nerve. They'd thrown us out of their home, then offered leftovers like we were beggars at the back door. I sighed and looked over at Caleb. He'd climbed into the front seat and was quietly watching a squirrel dart through the leaves. The ache in my chest deepened. He deserved better. The screen lit up again. This time, it was Aunt Sarah. After a pause, I picked up. Jenna, are you okay? She asked gently. Not really, I admitted. Did they tell you what happened? I saw it all, she said, her voice grim. It was awful. I tried to speak up, but Emily started crying and you know how that goes. What is she even talking about? I asked. I haven't said anything bad about her to anyone. Sarah let out a long sigh. It's all in her head, honey. She's convinced you're turning the family against her. Nobody with sense believes her, Aunt Sarah said gently. But your parents? They're walking on eggshells around her. Why would she make that up? I asked. Jealousy? Guilt? Maybe just to keep the attention off herself. The girl needs serious help, Jenna. And your parents, bless them, are doing her no favors by enabling it. As Sarah spoke, my phone buzzed again. Bank alert. Unusual withdrawal. $5,000 from checking. My stomach dropped. Sarah, I need to go, I said quickly. Something's wrong with my bank account. I hung up and opened my banking app. My heart sank. A $5,000 withdrawal had been made that morning from the emergency joint account I'd set up to help my parents after Dad's heart attack. It was the largest single withdrawal I'd ever seen. With trembling fingers, I texted my dad, "Why did you take $5,000 today?" His reply came almost immediately. "Emergency. We'll explain later." Then a message from Mom followed. "Emily needed help with some debts. We'll pay you back soon." Everything clicked in one nauseating moment. They hadn't just chosen Emily over us. They'd taken money from my account to bail her out. On Thanksgiving Day, after kicking us out. And then, it hit me. Emily probably didn't even know I'd been paying their bills for years. They'd let her believe they were supporting her, all while using my money and letting me be the bad guy. The betrayal was complete. Not just the public humiliation today, but years of being silently used, quietly depended upon, while receiving nothing but guilt trips and passive-aggressive comments in return. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, are you bringing Caleb to the Christmas pageant next week? He still has that solo, right?" As if nothing had happened. That was the final crack. They truly believed they could sweep this under the rug. That I'd just show up again, smiling, pies in hand. "Caleb?" I said gently. He turned from the window. "Ready to go home and start our Thanksgiving?" He nodded eagerly. "Can we still have pie?" "We'll get the best pie," I promised. "And ice cream, too." As I pulled out of the parking lot, I felt something shift inside me. A wall that should have been built years ago finally rising. It didn't hurt this time. It felt freeing. By the time we pulled into our driveway, it was nearly 4:30 p.m. The house was quiet. Caleb kicked off his shoes and looked up at me. "What are we going to eat, Mom?" I dropped my purse, took a deep breath, and smiled. "Let's go see what we've got, buddy." If you've ever had to rebuild your piece from the ground up, you'll want to hear what Jenna does next. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next chapter of her journey. I had been counting on Thanksgiving leftovers to get us through the weekend, so the fridge was practically bare. A few eggs, some shredded cheese, half a loaf of bread, and the usual pantry staples. "How about breakfast for dinner?" I suggested. Caleb's eyes lit up a bit. "With chocolate chip pancakes?" "Absolutely. Let me check if we have bacon, too." I rummaged through the freezer. No bacon. "Tell you what," I said, grabbing my purse. "Let's go get some real Thanksgiving food. Just for us." "Will anything even be open?" he asked, slipping on his sneakers. "The Supermart on Main stays open until 6 on holidays. Come on, let's make it an adventure." Caleb was quiet on the drive, his small face pressed to the window, watching the trees blur past. My phone buzzed repeatedly in the console, more texts from my parents, but I ignored them. I needed space. Time to figure out what this new boundary would look like. The supermart parking lot was mostly empty, just a handful of last-minute shoppers. Inside, the store was dim and quiet, just two tired-looking cashiers chatting near the registers. "Let's see what's left," I said, grabbing a cart. In the deli section, I nearly gasped. There, under the warming lamps, were 4 rotisserie chickens. "It's not turkey," I told Caleb, "but it's warm and delicious." We built a feast as we moved through the aisles. Instant mashed potatoes, a packet of gravy, a bag of dinner rolls, canned cranberry sauce, not as good as mine, but it would do, and a frozen pumpkin pie. In the produce section, we found a single bag of green beans. "Every Thanksgiving needs a green vegetable," I said. Caleb scrunched his nose. In the frozen foods aisle, as we debated vanilla versus caramel swirl ice cream, a woman about my age wheeled up with a cart that looked almost identical to mine. 1 rotisserie chicken, canned sides, pie. "Backup dinner?" she asked with a knowing smile. "Something like that," I smiled. Plans fell through. "Same here. My sister's whole house came down with the stomach flu. I'm Sophie. Jenna. And this is my son, Caleb." Sophie knelt slightly. "How old are you, Caleb?" "6." He grinned, holding up his fingers. "My nephew's 6, too." He was so excited for today. As we chatted, I felt a strange sense of comfort. When she mentioned she lived just a few blocks away, it felt meant to be. "This might sound a little strange," Sophie said as we wheeled our carts toward the checkout line. "But would you two like to join me for dinner?" I blinked. "Oh, that's very kind, but we wouldn't want to impose." "It's not an imposition at all," she said quickly. "Honestly, you'd be doing me a favor. Thanksgiving alone is, well, kind of depressing." Caleb looked up at me, eyes hopeful. "Can we, Mom? Please." Looking at his face, still soft with the innocence I was desperate to protect, I nodded. "If you're sure, we'd love to." We agreed to follow Sophie to her house after checking out. As we loaded the groceries into the back seat, I realized something strange. I felt lighter than I had all day. Like maybe, just maybe, the heaviness of the past few hours didn't have to follow us home. Sophie's house was a cozy craftsman with a bold red door and a little wind chime dancing above it. Inside, the space felt lived in and warm. Books were stacked in corners, colorful art covered the walls, and a sleepy golden retriever lifted his head as we walked in. "Make yourselves at home," Sophie said, leading us to the kitchen. "I'm no gourmet, but I can warm up a rotisserie chicken." We prepped our makeshift feast together, laughing over how lumpy my mashed potatoes were, trying to guess which ice cream Caleb would eat first, and bonding over stories of career pivots and single motherhood. Sophie, I learned, was a pediatric nurse who had just moved back to Boulder after finalizing a divorce. She didn't ask for details when I vaguely mentioned that our Thanksgiving plans had changed. She just smiled and passed me the cranberry sauce. By the time we sat down to eat, Caleb had completely shaken off the earlier drama. He folded dinner napkins like origami and arranged the rolls in a basket while Sophie lit a few candles. "Should we say what we're thankful for?" Sophie asked. "I'll go first," Caleb grinned. "I'm thankful for chicken that tastes like turkey, and new friends, and ice cream." Sophie smiled. "I'm thankful for surprise guests who make a lonely day feel full." When my turn came, I swallowed a lump in my throat. I'm thankful for kind strangers and fresh starts. Later, while Caleb watched a holiday movie in the living room, I finally checked my phone. 23 texts, 11 missed calls. I stepped onto Sophie's back porch and called Rachel. "Oh my God, Jenna," she answered. "Where have you been?" "Your mom's been calling me. Sorry, I needed space. It's been a day?" She said it was a misunderstanding at Thanksgiving dinner. What actually happened? Rachel's voice was sharp with concern as I stood on Sophie's back porch, the cold nipping at my fingers. I gave her the shortened version, my voice catching as I described the moment I was asked to leave, how Caleb had clutched my hand, how Emily had called him a brat, how my parents had stood by and let it happen. Those manipulative, ungrateful... Rachel cut herself off. "And they took $5,000 from you the same day?" I nodded, the bitterness rising in my throat. Apparently, Emily needed it for debts. Jenna, she said firmly, this has to stop. They're using you. I know, I sighed. I think I've known for a long time, but today made it impossible to ignore. So, what now? I leaned against the porch railing, watching the stars begin to peek through the evening sky. I don't know exactly, but things are going to change. After we hung up, I sent a short text to my mom. Caleb and I are safe. We'll reach out tomorrow. Then I opened my laptop and started typing an email. An unsent letter, really. I outlined the financial help I'd quietly given them over the past 5 years, and how deeply betrayed I felt by their actions that day. I didn't send it. Not yet. But putting it into words helped me see things clearly. Back inside, Sophie was quietly cleaning up while Caleb slept on the couch, a blanket pulled over him. He crashed hard, she smiled. Too much excitement. And too much pie. Thank you, I said sincerely. You saved our Thanksgiving. Mutual rescue, Sophie replied. I was one bad Hallmark movie away from crying into my chicken. As we washed dishes side by side, I opened up a little more. About my parents, Emily. The pressure I'd carried for too long. Sophie didn't judge. She just listened. Family is complicated, she said gently, but sometimes choosing distance is the healthiest thing you can do. I'm starting to believe that. By the time I carried Caleb to the car, we'd exchanged numbers and even made tentative plans for a play date with her nephew. Back home, I tucked Caleb into bed and sat at the kitchen table. First, I transferred the remaining balance out of the joint account with my parents. Then, I emailed my financial advisor. We need to talk. Urgently. Finally, I rewrote a calmer message to my parents. What happened today was deeply hurtful. Please give me time. I will reach out when I'm ready. Regarding the $5,000 withdrawal, I expect a full explanation of how this money was used. In the meantime, I've closed our joint account and will be re-evaluating our financial arrangement. Jenna, I read it twice. Then, with a deep breath, hit send before I could second-guess myself. The next morning, I called into the office and requested 2 personal days. I needed time, not just to regroup, but to finally take back control. As Caleb built a Lego city at the dining table, I sat with a notebook and calculator, combing through old statements and emails. I created a detailed timeline of every expense I'd covered for my parents over the past 5 years. Mortgage payments, utility bills, car repairs, Dad's post-heart attack medication. The number at the bottom made my stomach turn. $152,480.33. Next to it, I made a second column labeled "In Return." It was mostly blank. A few nights of babysitting, a handful of birthday cards, backhanded comments about how I was too intense as a mother. Seeing it laid out so clearly was sobering, but empowering. By the time my financial advisor returned my call that afternoon, I was ready. We can create a 6-month step-down plan, he said. Reduce support gradually so they have time to adjust. That's fair, I replied. But I want everything in writing this time. No more informal favors. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I got a voicemail from Aunt Sarah. Her tone was tight with frustration. Jenna, I just spoke with Thomas. Your parents told everyone at dinner they personally covered Emily's last rehab. I know that was your money. I'm so sorry. They've crossed a line. That was the final straw. I arranged for Caleb to have a play date with Sophie's nephew and drove to my parents' home. My folder of documentation sat beside me like a shield. I wasn't just confronting them for me. I was doing it for Caleb too. He deserved better than to grow up watching his mother be used and dismissed. I sat in their driveway, heart steady, for once not ruled by guilt or obligation. The ATM version of me was gone. As I stepped from the car and reached for the folder, the front door opened. My mother stood there, both relieved and wary. Jenna, she said, I'm so glad you came. Jenna, thank goodness. We've been so worried, my mother said, her voice tight with restrained emotion. May I come in? I asked, keeping my tone formal, my emotional walls intact. Of course, she said quickly, stepping aside. Your father's in the living room. We thought you might come today. The house looked exactly as it had on Thanksgiving. Same centerpiece, Same garland along the banister, but now the cheeriness felt hollow. As I stepped inside, my father rose from his recliner, his face unreadable. "Jenna," he said with a nod. "Good to see you." "Is Emily here?" I asked, remaining standing while they settled onto the couch. "No," Mom answered swiftly. "She's out." "Good," I said, "because before we talk about Thanksgiving, I'd like to address something else." I walked over to the coffee table and placed the folder down with deliberate care. Flipping it open, I laid the first spreadsheet between them. This is a complete record of the financial support I've provided over the past 5 years. They glanced at each other, but didn't reach for the document. "We know you've been generous," Dad began cautiously, "and we're grateful. Truly. $152,480.33, I stated. "That's the total, including the $5,000 you withdrew on Thanksgiving without asking." Mom's hand flew to her throat. That can't be right." "It is," I said, sliding over the corresponding statements. "Here are your mortgage payments, utility bills, medical expenses, car repairs, home insurance. Every dollar. Every transfer." Dad cleared his throat. "Now, Jenna, family helps family, and when you needed us to babysit, I've accounted for that too," I said, pulling out another sheet. "Standard rates for childcare put that at about $2,800 total. That leaves $150,942 of imbalance." "We're not keeping score," Mom said softly. "Apparently not," I replied, "because if you were, you might have hesitated before kicking me and your grandson out on Thanksgiving Day." They didn't respond, but for the first time, they looked genuinely ashamed. "Emily was in a fragile place," Dad said at last. "The doctor warned us. Another episode could be serious." "What exactly is wrong with Emily?" I asked, meeting their eyes. "You keep alluding to these episodes, but never explain." My parents exchanged a long, pained glance. "She's been diagnosed," Mom said quietly, "with borderline personality disorder. The doctors say it explains the mood swings, the substance use, the difficulty keeping relationships," my mom said softly. This was the first time I'd heard of any formal diagnosis. "When did this happen?" I asked. "About a year ago," Dad admitted, "after the Christmas incident." I remembered that night, Emily showing up 3 hours late, clearly intoxicated, picking a fight with Mom over something minor, then storming out into the snow. I hadn't known there was a diagnosis that followed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Emily didn't want anyone to know," Mom replied. "She was embarrassed." "So instead, you just let me think she was being Emily," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "You let me believe she was just choosing to be difficult instead of struggling with a real mental health issue." "We were respecting her privacy," Dad offered. I shook my head. "Do you realize how that changed the way I saw her? And the way I saw both of you? For years, I thought you were enabling bad behavior, not managing an illness." "We were trying to help," Mom said defensively, "by using my money without telling me what it was really for, by letting her think you were the ones footing the bill, by allowing her to treat me like a threat." Before they could respond, the front door opened. Emily walked in, keys jangling in her hand. She stopped dead when she saw me. Her expression darkened instantly. "What is she doing here?" she snapped. "Emily, please," Mom said with a weary sigh. "We're trying to talk." Emily marched into the living room, her eyes landing on the spreadsheets and statements spread across the coffee table. "What's all this?" "Financial records," I said calmly. 5 years of support, every mortgage payment, every bill. Her eyes flicked over the pages, her face briefly registering shock before it hardened again. "So, what? You're here to gloat?" Typical Jenna, always the hero, always needing credit. "That's not why I'm here," I replied. "I'm here because my son and I deserve respect. What happened on Thanksgiving was unacceptable." "Oh, boo-hoo," she sneered. "Poor, perfect Jenna didn't get her fairy tale dinner." I studied her, really studied her. Beneath the sarcasm, I saw it. Fear, exhaustion, desperation. "Emily," I said quietly, "I know about your diagnosis." Her face drained of color. She turned sharply to our parents. "You told her?" after you promised? They didn't have to, I said. You've been telling me for years. I just didn't have the context to understand. Don't psychoanalyze me, she snapped. You have no idea what I've been through. You're right, I said softly. I know I don't, I acknowledged quietly, because no one in this family actually communicates honestly. I turned back to my parents. I didn't come here to argue or to demand you pay me back. I came to tell you that our financial arrangement is changing. Dad leaned forward, suddenly tense. What do you mean, changing? I mean, I will no longer be supporting this household the way I have been, I said calmly. I've spoken to my financial advisor, and we've outlined a 6-month transition plan. Mom sat up straighter, alarm rising in her voice. You can't do that. Your father's health. My financial advisor will help you explore other options. I interrupted gently. There are choices available to you. Downsizing, reverse mortgages, tapping into retirement funds. None of those options require me continuing to sacrifice my financial security. Dad looked at me in disbelief. So you're cutting us off? Because of one bad day? A misunderstanding? This isn't about Thanksgiving, I said evenly. That was just the moment everything became clear. This is about years of being taken for granted, of quietly paying your bills while you gave Emily the credit, of being pushed aside whenever she needed something more. Emily scoffed. So, it is about the money. You're just proving my point. Always needing recognition. I turned toward her. Emily, do you even know who paid for your last rehab stay? She rolled her eyes. Mom and Dad, obviously. No, I said, my voice soft but steady. I did. Just like I paid for the 3 before it. Just like I paid for your therapy, the one you quit after 2 sessions. Just like I've paid the mortgage on this house, where you're currently living rent-free. Her face fell. She turned to our parents, searching for some denial, but none came. You let me believe, she started, then stopped, stunned. Yes, I said. They let you believe they were supporting you, just like they let me believe you were just being selfish, not sick. A flicker of real hurt crossed her face, but just as quickly, the wall went back up. So what? Now I'm supposed to throw you a parade? Bow down because you're so generous? No, I said simply, standing as I gathered my folder. I want honesty, and I want respect, for me and for Caleb. The transition plan starts next month, I said as I gathered my things. My financial advisor will be in touch to walk you through available options. Jenna, please, my mother pleaded, her voice cracking. We can't manage without your help. You can, I assured her gently. You're both intelligent, capable adults. You've relied on me, yes, but that's not the same as needing me. You have choices. My father's expression shifted from disbelief to something harder. Resentment. So that's it? He said coldly. After everything we've done for you, you're just walking away? The irony nearly made me laugh. I'm not walking away from this family, I replied. I'm finally setting boundaries that should have been there years ago. I turned toward the door, but Emily stepped in front of me. You think you're so perfect, don't you? She hissed. With your job and your neat little house and your golden child. Some of us have real problems, Jenna. I looked her in the eye. I know you're in pain, Emily, and I'm sorry for that. I truly am. But your pain doesn't justify inflicting it on others, especially not a 6-year-old who adores his grandparents and was crushed when they turned him away. For the first time, shame flickered in her eyes. I hope you get the help you need, I continued, and I hope someday we can rebuild something. But it has to be based on mutual respect. Until then, I need to protect myself. And Caleb. As I stepped into the entryway, my mother followed, her cheeks streaked with tears. What about Christmas? She whispered. What about Caleb's pageant? I paused. Caleb and I are spending Christmas our own way this year, building new traditions. As for the pageant, you're welcome to attend, as grandparents who respect his mother. 3 days later, I got an email from Emily. It was long, defensive in parts, but buried in it was something honest. An admission that her behavior on Thanksgiving had crossed a line, and a mention of a new therapist. A week after that, My parents left a voicemail inviting Caleb and me to dinner. Just the four of us. I declined, but suggested we meet at a quiet local restaurant the following week instead. The dinner was stiff, uncomfortable, but they tried with Caleb. And that mattered. As December continued, I kept my boundaries. Firm, but kind. I showed up for Caleb's winter pageant. My parents did too. I nodded politely from across the auditorium. I declined their invitation to Christmas dinner, but agreed to a short visit on Christmas Eve so they could exchange gifts with Caleb. Step by step, day by day, I was shaping a new kind of relationship with my family, one built on boundaries and mutual respect instead of obligation and financial dependence. It wasn't always smooth. There were awkward silences, difficult conversations, and moments when I questioned myself. But for the first time in years, I felt grounded. The biggest surprise came from Emily. A week before Christmas, she sent Caleb a handmade card, crayon drawings, glitter glue, and an apology scribbled in messy handwriting. "Sorry I was mean on Turkey Day. I'll try to be a better aunt. Emily." It was small, but it meant something. It gave me hope that, with time and proper care, maybe even our fractured bond could be repaired. By the time a month had passed since Thanksgiving, Caleb and I had slipped into a new rhythm, one that felt free of the emotional weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. Sunday pancakes became a sacred ritual. Wednesdays were for library visits, and Saturdays, adventure days. We picked a new corner of Boulder to explore every weekend. "Mom," Caleb asked one morning as I packed his lunch, "can we go to the Holiday Light Festival this weekend?" "Absolutely," I said, smiling. "And maybe we can invite Sophie and Tyler?" Caleb lit up. "Yes, Tyler said he's never been." My friendship with Sophie had deepened over the past month. What began as a random act of kindness in a grocery store had become a real source of support. Her calm, straightforward energy was a balm after years of walking on eggshells around my own family. "Jenna, you've got to stop apologizing for taking up space in people's lives," she told me during our last coffee date. "Real relationships aren't transactional." Her words stuck with me. They echoed in my mind as I peeled back layers of who I was without being the fixer, the dependable daughter, the financial safety net. I started therapy the week after Thanksgiving. Dr. Levine was helping me work through the guilt and grief I hadn't let myself acknowledge. "You didn't cause Emily's mental illness," she reminded me, "and you can't cure it. The same goes for your parents' financial choices." Acceptance was a process. Some days it felt manageable. Others, I had to remind myself not to respond to guilt-tripping texts. "I think we may have to sell the house," my dad said during our last call. "Downsizing," I replied gently, "might be the best next step." I'd responded neutrally, resisting the urge to offer solutions or soften the consequences. Watching my parents struggle wasn't easy, but I kept reminding myself, these were the natural outcomes of their own decisions. Not punishments, not cruelty, just reality. Caleb, ever the resilient one, adapted to our new family dynamic with quiet grace. He still asked about his grandparents now and then, but he never seemed upset when I explained that we were keeping visits short and intentional. The last time we met them for lunch at the diner near Chautauqua Park, he chatted nonstop about his new comic book and his Saturday hikes with Tyler. The tension hovering between the adults didn't seem to touch him at all. Emily hadn't been present at any of those gatherings. According to my mother, she was finally committing to her treatment plan, attending therapy twice a week and participating in an outpatient program focused on emotional regulation. I'd received the occasional message from her. Some were heartfelt, even apologetic. Others bristled with defensiveness. I answered the sincere ones with cautious encouragement and ignored the rest. As Christmas neared, the texts and voicemails from my parents grew more frequent. "It's tradition," my mother pleaded over the phone. "Caleb should be with family for Christmas." "We're building new traditions this year," I said gently, for what felt like the 100th time. "But you're welcome to join us for Christmas Eve dinner, if that works." To my surprise, they said yes. Even more surprising, they arrived on time, brought gifts that didn't raise any eyebrows, and made an effort to be warm. My father still let a few pointed comments about their tightening belt slip, but I could handle that. Compared to years past, It was peaceful. As they were leaving, my mother gave me a hesitant hug. "Thank you for including us," she whispered, voice thick with something I couldn't quite name. Maybe humility, maybe hope. After Caleb finally fell asleep, practically humming with holiday anticipation, I sat by the tree and breathed. The pain from Thanksgiving hadn't vanished, but it had become something else. A spark for change, a necessary fire. Christmas Day was spent with Sophie, her nephew Tyler, Rachel, and her husband, and 2 friends from work. There was laughter and chaos, mismatched plates and homemade lasagna, a chosen family, gathered with no expectations. "This is the best Christmas ever," Caleb declared, sprawled across the rug with Tyler and a pile of wrapping paper. And looking around, I believed him. Most importantly, I'd learned that breaking toxic cycles required courage, but brought a peace that was worth every uncomfortable step. When January arrived, I received a message I didn't expect. It was from Emily. She was relocating to Denver to begin an intensive outpatient program specifically for individuals with BPD. "I need to be somewhere new, away from the patterns I've been stuck in," she wrote. "Maybe one day we can have a real relationship as sisters. But first, I have to fix myself." It was the most honest thing I'd ever received from her. I replied, wishing her strength, and meant it. My parents, slowly adapting to life without my financial support, had listed their longtime house and begun looking at condos in a retirement community just outside Boulder. A decision that, if made years ago, could have spared all of us a great deal of tension. We weren't close, but we were civil. Our relationship had grown more balanced, less loaded with guilt and obligation. One snowy evening in mid-January, Caleb and I were preparing dinner together, his favorite spaghetti with extra cheese, when he asked a question that gave me pause. "Mom," he said, turning from the sauce he was stirring, "are we still a family, even though it's just us?" I put down my knife and crouched beside him. "Families come in all shapes," I told him. "Sometimes it's a mom and a dad, sometimes 2 moms, 2 dads, grandparents, or just people who love each other enough to show up." He thought for a moment. "So we're still a family, just me and you." "We're absolutely a family," I said, hugging him close. "And we've got our chosen family, too. Sophie and Tyler, Rachel, your teachers and friends, people who love us and treat us right." Caleb smiled, then went back to his spaghetti like the conversation had settled something important. And it had. That moment reminded me what all the struggle had been for, not revenge or vindication, but peace, boundaries, and a better future for both of us. Healing isn't linear, and I knew challenges would return. But I wasn't afraid anymore. The painful unraveling of Thanksgiving gave way to something rare: clarity. Clarity that real family uplifts, not undermines, and that the love we receive freely, without condition or transaction, is the love most worth holding on to. As Caleb and I sat down to dinner that night, laughter echoing through our small kitchen, I finally felt it. Not loss, not sadness, but freedom. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I never imagined one Thanksgiving could unravel so much, or that it would take being pushed out to finally see my worth clearly. I've learned that standing up for yourself, even when it means walking away from those who raised you, is one of the hardest but most powerful things you can do. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with your own family? Have you ever felt like the giver in a one-sided relationship? Please share your experience in the comments. I read them, and they mean more than you know. This journey wasn't just about reclaiming peace for myself. It was about showing my son that love isn't proven by sacrifice. It's proven by respect. That being family doesn't mean enduring mistreatment. That healing starts when we stop apologizing for taking up space, for saying enough, and for protecting our peace. If any part of my story resonated with you, I invite you to leave a word of encouragement, advice, or even a moment of your own that taught you how strong you really are. And if you've ever struggled with guilt over putting yourself first, I want you to remember this. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. They allow in what's healthy and keep out what harms us. We don't have to carry our family's dysfunction forever. We can be the ones who break the cycle. If you believe in healing, in chosen family, And in the quiet strength it takes to start over, please consider subscribing. I'll be sharing more stories like mine, where resilience shines through betrayal and where dignity finally takes the driver's seat. Let's support each other in becoming the people we needed when we were hurting. Let's rewrite what family really means.